What if Earth wasn't a miracle, but a project that went wrong? The clues are in our sky, our oceans, and the scars of old extinctions. If this experiment failed, the ending might already be written, or not. In the next minutes, you'll see the facts that change how you look at everything. If the experiment failed, do we still have a way to pass it anyway? What if Earth was not a perfect miracle, but a project that did not go as planned? I am not saying this is true. I am only asking a big, what if? Think of it as a gentle test for the mind. Think of it as a quiet walk on a long road at night, where each step is small and clear. The air feels cool on your skin. Your breath makes a thin cloud by your lips. A clock on the wall ticks 1 second after another, 60 in a minute, and the sound is like a soft drum. Outside your window, a thin moon hangs over the roofs, and a few stars blink like tiny lamps. A car rolls by at 30 miles an hour, then fades. Somewhere a dog barks 2 short barks and stops. In this calm, the question floats up and waits. What if this place we love is a kind of trial, and the trial went wrong? We will not rush. We will look and listen. We will use the best facts we have. We will keep our voice kind and plain. First, we set our rule. We do not claim. We only ask and check. We use what we know from careful work. Numbers many people have checked, tools that can be tested, and notes that can be read again. We leave room for doubt where doubt belongs, and we do not dress guesses up as truth. We watch for the tricks the brain can play, like seeing shapes in clouds or faces in wood. We stay curious, and we stay calm. If an idea is strong, it will stand without loud words. If it is weak, it will fall, and that is fine, because truth does not need rescue. Now picture the world from far away. A blue sphere with white swirls and brown and green lands. Light glints on wide water that covers about 70% of the surface. To live, things need a few basics: liquid water, a source of energy like sunlight, and a way to build and copy tiny parts called cells. On Earth, the heat sits in a band where water can be liquid most of the time, not ice and not steam. People call that band the habitable zone. It is not magic. It works with air, clouds, and rocks that move heat around. Listen to the small things that make this world feel tuned. Water runs from the tap near room heat, around 20 degrees Celsius, so you can drink it without pain. Your heart beats about 70 times each minute when you sit still, a thump you can feel at your wrist. A day lasts about 24 hours because the planet spins once in that time, and a year lasts about 365 days because Earth goes once around the sun in that time. The seasons turn like a slow wheel, and people can plan food and travel. The sun rises, the sun sets, and shadows stretch and shrink on time. All of this feels safe and steady. And yet the world is not a smooth slide. It is a stair with many steps. Some steps are small and soft. Some are rough and tall. The planet tilts by about 23.5 degrees, and that tilt gives seasons. The tilt wobbles a little over long spans, like tens of thousands of years. The path around the sun is not a perfect circle. It is a slight oval that also shifts slowly. Ice ages come and go in long beats. Volcanoes lift ash and gas into the sky. Big rocks sometimes fall from space and hit hard. Life bends, breaks, and grows back in new ways. Hold a cold glass of water in your hand, and then a warm mug of tea. Feel the switch as your skin tells your brain. Cold, then warm. That fast change wakes you up. Now see two pictures in your mind. One picture is of Earth from space, bright and round, with a thin airline like a blue ring. The other is a map with many red dots that mark heat records, dry rivers, lost trees, and storms that grew too strong. Both pictures can be true at once. That is the tension that makes this question feel sharp. If this was a test, where did it bend? If this was a plan, where did the plan meet a wall? This is not a tale of fear. It is a study with care. We ask simple, steady things. How much extra heat have people trapped in the last 50 years by adding gases that hold warmth? How many kinds of plants and animals have been lost in one human life? About 70 or 80 years? How many tons of fuel do we burn each day, each week, each year? And what lands, waters, and lungs pay that cost? These are numbers that teams around the world work to measure. Their work can be checked. Facts do not need shouts. They need careful eyes and honest notes. We will use small, solid pieces and build from there. Before we move, take one slow look around your own place. Is it dawn where you are right now, with pale light at the edge of the window and the smell of toast? Or is it late, with a small lamp on, the room near 21 degrees, and the street dark and still? Are your feet on cool tile or a warm rug? Do you hear rain on the roof, a fan hum, a kettle click at the boil, or the soft buzz of a phone at arm's length? These tiny things tie you to this big question. They bring the far idea into your hand. They remind us that any test, real or not, shows up in tiny acts and tiny moments. A door held for a stranger. A smile can change a day. Picture the world before any score is given. Only the setup of our home. Earth goes around the sun at about 150 million kilometers, close to 93 million miles, far enough so oceans do not boil, and close enough so they do not freeze. You can feel that balance on your skin as warm light at noon and cool air at night, a soft push and pull like breath. At the top of the air, each square meter gets about 1,360 watts of sunlight. Clouds, air, ice, and dark ground share and reflect that energy, so some parts warm, some parts cool, and life finds room to live. Step to a window and place your hand on the glass. Inside it is about 21 degrees Celsius and dry. Outside, the wind runs its fingers along the frame at maybe 20 kilometers per hour, and you can hear a faint whistle that reminds you air is not empty, but a moving sea. The air is a careful mix. About 78% is nitrogen, about 21% is oxygen, and tiny slices are other gases like argon and carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is small, about 4 parts in 10,000, yet it holds heat well, the way a thin blanket still keeps you from shivering on a cool night. Water vapor slides in and out each day with temperature and wind, making clouds that glow white from above and gray from below. Your lungs take in about half a liter with each quiet breath, and the air smells different in rain, in snow, in pine woods, in city streets. Proof that this thin shell carries life signs everywhere. Water is the busy worker in this setup. About 71% of Earth is ocean, and waves roll power to the shore with a rhythm you can count as they break every 6 or 8 seconds on a calm day. Rivers run cold from snowmelt in spring and run warm and slow in late summer. Lakes freeze with a skin of ice that floats because solid water is less dense than liquid water near 4 degrees Celsius, a lucky quirk that lets fish live through winter. Water rises as vapor, cools, forms tiny droplets around dust, and falls again as rain you can taste if you tilt your face to the sky. A single storm may drop 20 millimeters on a town in an hour. A long dry spell may leave less than 200 millimeters in a year. A wet forest may drink more than 3,000 millimeters, and each place grows what it can. Put your ear near a gutter and hear the steady tap, tap, tap as drops find the path down. Watch them join into a thin sheet, then a stream, then a creek that makes a silver line across dark soil. Rock and slow heat under your feet also set the stage. Plates of crust move at the speed your fingernails grow, a few centimeters each year, pushed by slow currents in the mantle. Where plates meet, mountains rise by meters in a quake, or by a hair each year over long ages. Where they pull apart, lava climbs up to make new seafloor that cools black and glassy. You can feel the memory of that heat at a hot spring that steams on a frosty morning and smells faintly of sulfur, or see it where a gray ash slope meets green fields. Volcanoes send dust and gas high, and sometimes a far sunset glows deeper red because tiny particles bend the light across the sky. Where Earth spins once each day and leans about 23.5 degrees, so the sun's path across the sky climbs higher in summer and lower in winter. You can mark the tilt by watching your noon shadow shrink toward the solstice and grow longer toward the equinox, by seeing how daylight stretches from less than 9 hours to more than 15 hours if you live far from the equator. A day lasts about 24 hours. A year is about 365 days and a quarter, which is why we add a day every 4 years to keep our clocks close to the sky. The moon hangs at an average of 384,000 kilometers away, bright enough to cast a soft shadow you can see on a sidewalk at night. Its pull lifts the ocean by half a meter or more in many places, and by many meters in narrow bays, so the sea breathes in and out in tides you can set your watch by. The moon's tug also helps calm wild swings of Earth's tilt, like a quiet hand steadying a spinning top, and that makes the seasons steadier over very long time. Stand on a pier at low tide and smell salt and seaweed and mud. Come back 6 hours later and the boards shake as water slaps them, and you know the pull of the moon is real, even if you cannot see the force. A magnetic field, made by liquid iron moving in the outer core, stretches around the planet like an invisible cloak. You cannot see it, but a compass needle turns to line up with it, and bright curtains of green and red sometimes glow near the poles when charged particles from the sun ride the field into thin upper air. On a still winter night, you can hear snow crunch under your boots and watch the aurora move in slow waves, and you know the field is there, guiding some birds and helping shield living things from fast solar winds. All these parts link through cycles that run at once. Carbon moves from air to leaf to soil and back. Water moves from sea to cloud to river to sea again. Nitrogen moves from the air into soil by lightning and by tiny workers called bacteria, and then back to the air again. Energy flows from the sun into plants and then into animals, into your warm hands as you hold a bowl of soup on a cold evening. If you listen closely, you can hear the rhythm of these loops in small sounds: the soft hiss of a kettle at a boil, the drip of meltwater from an icicle, the roll of pebbles in a stream as it drops a centimeter and swirls. The setup also includes patterns that return like the hands of a clock. Winds circle the globe in bands. Storms turn as the planet spins. Ocean currents slide warm water toward the poles and cold water back toward the equator. Snow comes in winter and melts in spring. Rivers flood and then pull back. Grass is brown and then green again. You can chart some of these with a simple notebook and a ruler. First frost in early November. Last frost in late March. The sun high at noon in June. By an angle you can measure with a stick and a tape. If this were only a story of comfort, the setup would be easy to read. But balance does not mean still. A small nudge in one place can echo across the rest. A rise of a few tenths of a degree in average heat, a few extra parts of carbon dioxide in 10,000 breaths, a shift of rain by 100 millimeters in a year, and the stage feels different under your feet. A wetland dries and cracks. A reef turns pale. A forest burns hotter and faster than before. None of this says the story must end badly. It only says the system is tight and a gentle push can matter. So touch the frame of the window. Cool to your fingers at 19 degrees indoors while the wind moves outside, and know that even this simple comfort depends on the grand setup being in place. Smell the rain as it starts, hear the roof drum, see the gutter run, and taste the clean edge of the first drops on your lip. Feel a pebble in your shoe, and think of mountains ground to sand, grain by grain, step by step. This is the stage. It is wide and old and precise. It holds light, air, water, rock, and time in steady lines, so life can try its best work. And because you can feel and measure these lines, you can also tell when they bend, which is the first clue in any big story, and the reason to keep walking forward with your eyes open. Stable does not mean still, and Earth shows this in quiet moves and sudden jolts. Most days you see pale blue sky and the same path of the sun, and it feels fixed. But it is not. The planet spins once each day and leans about 23.5 degrees, and that lean makes summer and winter trade places. When the sun climbs high, your noon shadow shrinks. When it stays low, your shadow stretches long. Over long spans, the tilt wobbles by a few degrees. The path around the sun also shifts its oval shape. These slow sky clocks, over tens of thousands of years, change how strong the seasons feel and where ice will grow or melt. In past cold times, ice sheets more than a kilometer thick covered land far from the poles. Not all change waits for ages. Some comes in a minute. Deep below, hot rock moves in slow loops. The shell above is split into plates that creep a few centimeters each year, about as fast as your nails grow. Where plates meet, land lifts and bends. A fault can sit quiet for a century and then jump in 10 seconds. The ground lurches. A book slides off a shelf. Water in a glass makes waves that slap the rim. In a big quake, a bridge may sway by half a meter, and a path can crack with a gap you can put your hand into. After the shaking, the sea may roll back and then rush in as a long, low wave that keeps coming for minutes. Fire from below reshapes the air as well. When a volcano wakes, ash can rise kilometers into the sky. Fine dust rides the wind and turns day to dusk. The smell of sulfur stings your nose, like a blown-out match. Some eruptions chill sunlight a little for a year or two, and sunsets turn deep orange and red. Near a fresh flow, you feel heat like an oven door opened wide. Black glass and rough rope shapes harden, and steam curls from cracks. Space sometimes adds a hard shove. Most nights, small grains burn as brief streaks. Once, in a very long time, a big rock makes it through. It hits at more than 10 kilometers each second. The shock makes the ground act like a liquid. A crater opens wider than a city. About 66 million years back, such a strike helped end most dinosaurs. Dust and soot blocked sunlight. Plants failed, and food chains broke. The sea and the air move heat in their own maze. Currents push warm water toward the poles and slide cold water back toward the equator. A current that slows by a few centimeters each second can change how a coast feels in winter and where fish swim. Winds, too, dance in bands. As the planet spins, winds turn, storms swirl, and rain belts slide by a few degrees. A farmer can live by one pattern and then see it shift. Rain that once came in may now come in March, or not at all. Ice gives us a slow clock we can see and hear. Watch a lake in late fall. Ice forms at 0 degrees Celsius, clear at first, then white with bubbles. In spring, the ice thins. You tap it and hear a hollow note. Then it breaks, and wind drives it to the shore in tinkling sheets. Now picture a glacier. It moves tens of meters each year, yet it can carve a valley that no storm could make. Living things hold the record of change. Trees grow rings, one for each year. A dry year leaves a thin ring. A wet year leaves a thick ring. If you press your fingertips to a log, you can feel the bands. Corals lay down layers in warm seas. If heat lasts too long, corals turn white. Many recover if stress ends. If it stays, reefs can die back. While all this moves, your senses still say life is normal. The air smells like rain on dust. But inside that beat, other clocks spin. Seconds for a gust, hours for a tide, months for a storm track, years for a drought. Life answers change with change. Seeds wait in dry soil and then wake after rain. A bird shifts its route when a river moves. A city plants trees, and the street grows 10 degrees cooler in July shade than in bare sun. Yet life can also break when the push is too strong or too fast. A bird that times its trip by daylight can reach a nesting ground 2 weeks late if insects peak early in a warm spring. A coral near its heat limit can bleach in a hot summer and fail if hot days keep coming. If this were a test, this chapter would show how questions arrive. Some are slow and give hints, like ice that thins ring by ring. Some are fast and give no warning, like a fault that jumps. Some are loud, like a volcano, and some are quiet, like a current that drifts a little. Life has passed many trials by adapting or moving. Life has also failed at times, when the push was too strong or came too close together. So hold two pictures at once. In one, a pond mirrors a blue sky, and a maple leaf floats without a sound. In the other, a wall of gray water races toward a shore at airplane speed. Both are true on the same planet. The tension between them is the truth we must live with. It does not mean fear, it means attention. It means a few numbers matter. A tilt of 23.5 degrees, a change of 1 degree in air heat, a shift of rain by 100 millimeters in a year, a push of plates by centimeters each year. For now, it is enough to feel the wobble and to know the table still stands. At night, the moon hangs above the roof like a small lamp, bright enough to paint a silver line on the road and a pale edge on a leaf. If you step outside and hold out your hand, you can see your shadow. It is faint, but it is there. The moon feels close, yet it is far. On average, it sits about 384,000 kilometers away. It looks large because it is wide, about 3,174 kilometers across, and because it fills about half a degree of the sky. When the air is clear, the light makes roof tiles shine and turns wet grass into tiny mirrors. The moon is not just pretty, it pulls. You can feel that pull at the shore. Stand by the water and smell salt and wet stones. Listen to the slap of waves on wood. Watch a rope lift and sink at a dock as the tide rises and falls. In some places, the tide range is about half a meter. In narrow bays, it can be many meters. The water level shifts in a steady beat. Most coasts see two highs and two lows each day, about 6 hours and 12 minutes apart. When the sun and moon line up, the pull adds and tides reach higher springs. A week later, the pulls cross and the tides are smaller neaps. If you mark the waterline for a month, you will see the moon's phase match the curve in your notes. The pull is not only on water. Rock moves too, though only a little. The ground lifts and sinks by a few centimeters as Earth turns under the moon. You cannot see the land breathe, but the strain is real. In the deep ocean, the tide stirs layers and carries food. In river mouths, the tide shoves fresh and salt back and forth. In tide pools, a rise of a few centimeters can mean life for a snail or a star. There is another job the moon seems to do. It helps keep Earth's lean from swinging too far. Earth tilts by about 23.5 degrees. Over long ages, the tilt does change by a few degrees, and those slow shifts help set ice ages and warm times. Math and models suggest that a big moon damps wild swings. Without such a moon, the tilt could wander more and faster. With our moon, the change is softer, like a slow wave. This does not mean the tilt stays fixed, but the moon's mass, about 1/81st of Earth's, adds a steady hand. The moon also drifts away a little each year. Lasers bounced off mirrors on its face show a drift of about 3.8 centimeters per year. As the moon moves out, Earth's spin slows a tiny bit, and our day grows longer by a few thousandths of a second each century. Old coral rings hint at faster days in deep time, with more days in a year long ago. Look up and notice the grain of the moon's face. Dark plains of frozen lava make wide seas. Bright highlands are pocked with craters. The air there is almost none, so shadows are sharp and heat swings by hundreds of degrees. We do not live there. We live here, in air that smells like rain, in water that holds heat, on land that grows grass. Yet that silent ball still shapes our day. The moon's cycle sets small clocks. The time from one new moon to the next is about 29.5 days. That rhythm shows up in old calendars and in tide books. Fishers check the phase to plan a night trip. A full moon can light a path well enough to see a stone. Clear, dry nights under a bright moon can bring sharp frost in late fall. All this steadiness can make you think the moon will fix any shake the earth feels. It will not. The moon cannot stop a fault from jumping, a volcano from breaking the ground, or a storm from feeding on warm water. It does not keep the climate fixed. It only smooths one part of the system. If Earth was a test, a helper was built into the setup. Yet a helper is not a cure. There is a quiet tension in this light at night. The moon is both near and far, both steady and changing. It rises later by about 50 minutes each day. It swells from thin to full and back to thin again. It lifts the sea by meters, but lifts the land by only centimeters. It steadies the tilt, but cannot freeze it. It holds our gaze, but it does not hold our fate. You can love the glow on a calm bay and still know that care and choice on land shape the next day. On your walk home, you may look down and see a white pebble on dark asphalt and think of a crater rim far away. You may look up through bare tree limbs and see the moon caught there like a coin. Your breath shows as a faint cloud in the cold. Somewhere a tide is turning, even if no one is there to watch. This is the point in our story where we honor a helper. We keep it simple and plain. We do not give the moon powers it does not have, and we do not forget the powers it does have. We note the numbers. We mark the times. We feel the pull in our hands as we hoist a wet line and sense the rise. We feel it in our legs as we walk the same beach and see the waterline shift by meters in half a day. We carry the facts like smooth stones in a pocket. They are small, but they are solid. We remember the moon's quiet, steady help. They help us see the stage we stand on, and they warn us, gently, that even with a guide in the sky, the next steps are still ours to take. Beneath your feet, far below rock and soil, liquid iron moves like a slow river. That motion makes an invisible field around Earth, a shield we cannot see but can use. A small magnet on a string turns until it points mostly north, and that is the proof. Hold the compass in your palm and feel the tiny twitch as the needle settles. This field is not magic. It comes from moving metal and spin and heat. The outer core is mostly iron with some nickel, hot like a furnace, yet under pressure. As it flows, it makes electric currents, and the currents make the field. Near the surface, the field is weak but steady, about 25 to 65 microteslas. You cannot feel that with skin, but a bird can read it. And a compass can too. High above, the field spreads out like a long teardrop, pushed by the solar wind. The sun always blows thin gas outward at about 400 kilometers per second. Those charged particles race past us day and night, seen only by special machines in space. Most days the wind is calm, and the field guides the particles around our world. Some days the sun erupts and throws a storm called a coronal mass ejection toward us. When that hits, wires hum, radio cracks, and bright curtains bloom near the poles. People call those lights auroras, and they wave in green and red, slow and silent. If you stand outside on a cold night and look north, you may see them move like breath. This light show tells a true thing, that the field is working as a guide and a gate. Some energy gets in, much is turned aside. Some is held in belts high above us. We call them the Van Allen belts, and they trap particles that circle Earth many times. Satellites cross those zones and must be built to take that extra dose of radiation. Astronauts see more flashes and need thick walls. People on the ground do not. So the shield helps. But it is not the only reason our air remains. Venus keeps a thick atmosphere without a strong global field, and Mars lost most of its air with little field left. Other parts matter too, like gravity, volcano gas, and the way sunlight breaks molecules high above. Still, the field gives us time and peace by turning many fast particles away. You can hear the echo of storms in a radio hiss and see their path in glowing sky. You can feel nothing on your skin, yet power lines may surge and need care. This quiet help sets up a gentle tension because a shield can fail if we depend on it too much. It is strong, but it changes over time, and the change is slow but real. The field drifts, tilts, and even flips direction after many thousands to millions of years. Rocks keep that record like a tape, with iron grains frozen in different directions as lava cools. During a flip, the strength can drop, and more particles reach lower orbits for a time. Life has lived through many flips. So a flip is not the end. It is a strain we can manage. Today, we also map a weak patch over the South Atlantic, a dip called the South Atlantic Anomaly. Satellites passing there see more hits and sometimes pause their work until they are clear. Again, the lesson is simple and true. The shield is active, living, and not fixed. If you want a sense of scale, Hold a bar magnet near iron filings and watch them line up. Now picture the whole planet as the magnet, and the filings as a stream of charged dust from the sun. You cannot see the lines in space, but satellites feel them, and so do tiny grains and ions. In this way, the shield is like a traffic sign, a fence, and a storage yard all at once. It guides, it blocks, and it holds. Walk outside on a clear noon, and a compass will still point, even if clouds hide the sun. Walk out at night, and the needle points the same. That quiet repeat is a comfort. But listen to the soft foreshadow in the data. A drift here, a small dip there, a slow crawl of the poles across maps. Scientists place observatories from Arctic ice to island rock and send probes to taste the wind in space. They measure in microteslas, nanoteslas, watts, and electron volts, and they compare with old lava flows. Their notes say the same steady thing. The shield protects, but it also breathes and shifts. So if Earth were a planned trial, this layer would be a rule that helps players last longer. It would not grade our choices. It would only set the stage so choices can be made. And if the experiment failed, the shield would still shine and hiss and flow because physics does not care about our story. The aurora would still draw lines across a black sky, even if no one stood in the snow to watch. The sun would still blow, and the wind would still press our field like a flag. Yet we do stand here, and we do watch, and we do plan for storms we cannot stop. We learn to turn off some tools during hard bursts and to harden wires and chips. We add alarms, we change orbits, and we share space weather reports like we share rain reports. We teach that a compass points not to true north, but to magnetic north, which wanders across Canada towards Siberia. We remind each other that a shield works best when we respect both its strength and its limits. On a crisp morning, breathe the cold air, tap your compass, and glance at the quiet sky. Somewhere above, at a height far beyond planes, the field lines curve and sing in particles you cannot see. Listen. On some nights the sky looks quiet, but it is not. Far beyond the clouds, giant planets move like slow guardians. Jupiter is the largest, more than 300 times the mass of Earth. It circles the Sun about 5 times farther out, near 5.2 astronomical units, and needs almost 12 years for one trip. Through a small telescope, you can see bands on its face and 4 bright moons in a line. Space is not a neat lab. It is a busy street. Jupiter's pull is strong. A pebble in a river is tugged by the water. A small rock in space is tugged by Jupiter. Some rocks are pushed away from the inner solar system. Others are nudged inward toward us. Both things are true. This is why people say Jupiter can shield and also aim. It depends on where the rock starts, how fast it moves, and what path it follows. That is the tension. Between Mars and Jupiter sits the main asteroid belt. Stones there range from dust to worlds hundreds of kilometers wide. The rocks are far apart, but time is long. Jupiter's rhythm makes gaps called resonances. In those gaps, a rock feels a small pull at the same point each loop. The tug repeats like a drum and grows. At last, the path changes. And some bodies are sent toward the sun. Farther out lies the Kuiper belt. Beyond Neptune, and much farther still, the Oort cloud, a deep cold shell that may hold trillions of icy bodies. When those are stirred, long-period comets fall inward. Sometimes Jupiter grabs one. In 1994, a comet named Shoemaker-Levy 9 broke into pieces and fell into Jupiter. Dark scars larger than Earth marked the clouds for weeks. Big worlds take hits too. Jupiter also travels with swarms. 60 degrees ahead and 60 behind on its path sit Trojan asteroids, parked where poles balance. Charts look calm, yet the story is not. Now and then a piece is jostled free. Saturn plays a part as well. It is about 95 times Earth's mass and orbits in about 29 years. When Jupiter and Saturn line up in certain ways, their linked pull can change the timing of small bodies. Think of 2 people pushing a swing. If they push at the right beat, the arc grows. The solar system has beats and pushes too. What reaches Earth? Most nights, dust burns as quick streaks. A few times each year, we pass through a stream and see many streaks in an hour. Those are meteor showers like the Perseids and the Geminids. Most bits are the size of sand. They flare and are gone. Now and then, a larger body arrives. In 2013, a space rock about 20 meters wide came over Chelyabinsk, Russia. It blew apart high in the air with energy like hundreds of kilotons of TNT. Windows shattered. People felt a heat wave and were knocked down by the shock. In 1908, over the Tunguska River, a blast flattened trees across more than 2,000 square kilometers. Craters in rock on many continents mark older strikes. Impact speed is fast. The least is about 11 kilometers per second for a fall straight in. The most can be over 70 kilometers per second for some comets. At such speeds, even a small mass has huge energy. A stone the size of a house can hit like a bomb. A stone the size of a city block can change weather for a season. A stone the size of a mountain can end an age. 66 million years ago, a body likely about 10 kilometers wide struck near the Yucatan. Dust and sulfur rose high. Sunlight dimmed. Plants died. The chain went on. So is Jupiter a friend or a foe? The careful answer is both and neither. It is a mass that moves by rules. It can steer danger away. It can also load the lane. Scientists test this with long computer runs. They change the starting map and watch where rocks go. Some models show fewer large impacts with Jupiter. Some show more small ones sent our way. The effect depends on size, start point, and timing. Space is not on our side or against us. Stand in your yard on a cool night and feel air at maybe 12 degrees Celsius on your cheeks. Above you, Jupiter rises in the east, bright like a white spark. If you wait an hour, it climbs a hand's width higher. You are tiny here, yet you can still take part. People map near-Earth objects with telescopes and radar. They fit orbits with math, rank risk, and post updates so towns can be warned. This is the foreshadow. We have tools now. We can find. We can warn. We can plan to push a test rock by a small speed change. A tiny nudge years early can miss Earth by thousands of kilometers. A mission has already tried this with a target and a timed hit, and it worked. But the sky is wide, and our watch is not perfect. New objects come from the glare of the sun. The giants will keep on pushing and pulling while we sleep. Think again of the first quiet line. The sky looks calm, but it is not. That does not mean fear must rule. It means attention must. When you see Jupiter, you are seeing a main player in a long, complex dance. Its mass, its speed, its place, and its neighbors shape where small stones drift. The dance can spare us. The dance can test us. If this were a grand experiment, the giants would be the heavy hands at the edge of the board. They do not choose sides. They only set pieces in motion. We must choose what to do when a piece rolls our way. Look up, note the bright dot, and feel both wonder and duty. Life on Earth tells a hard story with long, quiet parts and sudden, sharp turns. You can hear the quiet in summer bees, in a frog's soft splash, in the warm smell of pine at noon. You can see the sharp turns in rock, in a thin gray ash line, in a cliff where seashells stop and new forms begin. The planet has had many losses. The biggest are called mass extinctions. In those times, a large share of species were gone in a short span of deep time. After each fall, life slowly grew back. But the world that returned was not the same as the world that was lost, and you can read that change in layers of stone that stack like pages, one on top of another. The first giant loss we know well came about 443 million years ago, near the end of the Ordovician. Most life then lived in the sea. Ice grew on land, sea level fell, cold water spread, and many oceans turned low in oxygen. Corals and many shell makers died. The next big loss came in the Devonian, between about 372 and 359 million years ago. It did not come in one hit. It came in pulses. Reefs failed again and again. Some seas lost oxygen. Large fish vanished from many places. Plants were taking root on land, and rivers and soils changed. The coastlines moved, and whole food webs snapped and sagged. The worst known loss came later, about 252 million years ago, at the Permian-Triassic boundary. People call it the Great Dying. In the sea, most species, maybe more than 9 out of 10, were lost. On land, many kinds of animals were gone, and forests failed. The air held more carbon dioxide, and the ocean grew warm and more acidic. Huge lava flows in what is now Siberia poured out over long years, layer after layer, a stack far beyond human scale. The heat and gas from those flows, plus linked shifts in oceans and air, pushed life past limits. Black shales formed where seas went still and breathless. In some river rocks from that time, ash and red beds tell of drought, dust, and heat. If you place your ear to the stone, the silence there feels heavy, like a room after a storm. Later, about 201 million years ago, at the Triassic-Jurassic boundary, there was another sharp turn. Again, vast lava fields spread as a supercontinent began to split. Many reptile groups vanished, and new doors opened for the rise of dinosaurs, which then ruled land for more than 130 million years. The quiet parts between the shocks were not the same as before. New forms filled open roles. If life were a team, the roster changed. The most famous loss for us came about 66 million years ago at the Cretaceous-Paleogene boundary. A body from space, likely around 10 kilometers wide, struck near what is now the Yucatan. The crater is about 180 kilometers across, hidden under younger rock and water. The hit threw dust, tiny glass, and sulfur into the sky. Sunlight dimmed. Fires burned. Food webs broke. A thin layer rich in iridium, a rare metal in crust but common in some space rocks, marks that time in cliffs on many coasts. Each time, after the fall, recovery took time. In some places, reefs took millions of years to build back. In some soils, tiny shells and worms returned in tens of thousands of years, then more complex webs followed. In the long view, life is stubborn. It finds cracks, pools, caves, shores, and makes a start. New forms branch from survivors. A small shrew-like mammal that hid in the dark might many millions of years later lead to primates and then to us. That is not fate. It is branching and chance over wide spans of time, with rules set by heat, cold, food, and friends and foes. You can feel this story with your own senses. Run your hand over a sandstone ledge and feel ripples from an old shore. Hold a stick of white chalk and know it is the pressed shells of tiny sea life from warm seas long ago. In a museum, you may see fern fronds, black on gray, thin as paper, and neat as a stamp. That leaf fell in a world that is gone. Facts can be simple and stark. 5 major mass extinctions are widely named: the Ordovician-Silurian, the Late Devonian, the Permian-Triassic, the Triassic-Jurassic, and the Cretaceous-Paleogene. Each had its own chain of causes, like cold and seafall, heat and gas from huge lavas, a strike from space, shifts in oceans, or a mix of them. The details are still under study, but the pattern stands. Large stress, many losses, slow repair. Between those 5 were smaller spikes of loss that still bent the path. The tension in this chapter lies here. If Earth were a test, did life fail in those times? Or did the test change the rules and ask new things? A reef that dies is a loss. A forest that turns to ash is a loss. Yet new reefs, new woods, and new animals later filled the world. Life did not get a score. Life got more questions. You can hear a soft echo of that now, as we face fast change of our own making. This is not that chapter yet, but the foreshadow is clear. When stress is fast or wide, systems break, and what comes back is not a copy, but something new that fits the new rules. Stand by a river and watch leaves spin in an eddy. One leaf sinks and vanishes. Another gets pulled free and slides into the main flow. The river goes on. That is not to make less of loss. It is to see the scale, to hold 2 truths. The world can end for a species, and the world goes on for others. A stone in your pocket can be a memory of both. It is cool at first, then warm in your hand. We do not need to call the world a lab to learn from it. We can read numbers and rocks. We can test ideas and be plain about what we do not know. We can name the years with care. About 443,000,000, 372 to 359,000,000, 252,000,000, 201,000,000, 66,000,000. We can be gentle with the story because it holds many ends and many starts. We can let the facts speak, and we can listen. From cliff to core to beach sand, the record is clear, deep, and it tells us that change can be sudden, loss can be vast, and yet life still finds ways to begin again. People arrived like a small spark on a dark hill and then grew into a bright line across the map. For a long time, days were slow. Fire snapped and sent up gray ribbons. Stone blades flashed. Meat roasted and smelled rich. The world was wide, and the load was light. Then the pace changed. Around 11,000 years ago, some people stayed in one place and planted seeds. They watched green rows rise and saw that food could stand still while people built homes around it. Fences went up. Grain filled clay jars. A field became a plan. The first rows were simple lines in earth. Over time, rows reached farther. A valley that once held reeds and birds now held barley and wheat. Hills were cut into steps to hold rain. Canals curved for kilometers and spread like blue veins. Work filled the day from first light to last. A wooden plow cut a furrow 20 centimeters deep. An ox pulled with steady power. Grain rose in stacks tied with twists of straw. Clay marks kept counts of jars and sheep and days. Trade began, and paths grew smooth. Salt moved inland. Pots moved outward. Stories moved with them. As food grew, so did numbers. 10 people became 100, then 1,000, then many more. By the year 1800, about 1 billion people lived on Earth. By 1930, about 2 billion. By 1974, about 4 billion. Today, there are more than 8 billion. You can feel that number in daily sound. A road hums before dawn. A school bell rings for hundreds of kids. A market echoes with voices. At night, a coast shows a necklace of towns from a hill. A plane climbs and leaves two white lines that fade slow. Cities rose where paths crossed. Streets ran straight for long blocks. Stones clicked under cartwheels. Later, steel rails sang as trains rolled by. Water came to homes in pipes. Waste went away in pipes. Food from far away filled shops. Oranges crossed seas. Rice crossed mountains. Tools changed the pace again. First came muscle and wood, then wind and water. A millstone turned and ground grain. Then coal lit dark mines and drove iron machines. A steam engine pumped water and pulled cars. Oil and gas followed. A liter of fuel could move a small car many kilometers. Engines turned fuel into motion and heat. Roads spread like nets. Wires carried light and news. Screens carried images and maps. Farms grew larger. One combine harvested dozens of hectares in a day. A pivot arm drew a green circle, a half-kilometer wide, in a dry plain. Fertilizer came in bright bags with numbers on them. Seeds were chosen for yield and strength. Fences cut old paths that herds once used. Forests fell and fields widened. Wetlands were drained and made flat. The smell of peat smoke gave way to the smell of diesel at dawn. On some hills, terraces held. On others, rain cut new gullies after trees were gone. These gains saved lives. A cut could be cleaned with clear water. A cough could be eased. A baby born small could be warmed and fed. A storm track could be seen on a screen 2 days ahead. Bridges held heavy loads. Food arrived in winter. Books and later screens taught in bright rooms. In many homes, night study by warm light replaced smoke and dim flame. In many towns, more children lived to grow tall. But the price showed in air, water, and land. Smoke and fumes added new gases to the sky. One gas, carbon dioxide, rose from about 280 parts per million before large engines to more than 420 parts per million now. That is less than 0.1%, yet it holds heat well, like a thin blanket. Methane and nitrous oxide add more. Tiny soot floats and darkens snow. Clear days grew hazy in some cities. A hill that once showed sharp 20 kilometers away turned soft and gray. Rivers felt the change. Dams held back floods and made lakes. Turbines spun. Fish met concrete walls. A clear stream turned brown after storms as bare fields shed soil. In cities, rain hit roofs and roads and ran off fast. Storm drains roared. Streets filled to the top of a curb in minutes. Then the water was gone, and the ground was still dry beneath because it could not drink through rock and asphalt. On coasts, harbors deepened to make room for ships more than 300 meters long. Cranes rolled and cables creaked. The sea felt the change too. Warmth seeped down. The pH shifted a few tenths. A shell that once formed with ease now cost a small creature more work. Reefs shone with life when water was clear and just right. They dimmed when heat lingered and water turned sour. Ice at the poles thinned. In some summers, sea ice broke up weeks earlier than before. A white plain with blue cracks turned to loose flows and dark water that drank sunlight. You can feel the new heat in small ways. On a July road, the blacktop can read above 50 degrees Celsius. Touch it and pull back. In a park, shade can feel 10 degrees cooler. A brick wall gives off warmth at sunset. An attic smells like dry wood when the roof bakes. In winter, freeze and thaw repeat more often in some places. Ice on a pond forms later by days or weeks. Snow turns to slush in a midwinter rain, and then freezes again, rough like coral when you walk. If this were a test, this act would be the moment when the room grows loud and the clock seems to tick faster. We have power to build and fix, and we also have power to strain the base that holds us. The questions grow clear. Can we feed billions and still leave room for wild lands and clean rivers? Can we light homes and not cook the air? Can we move and trade and still give time and space for soil to form and forests to grow back? There are answers that begin to show. Wind towers turn on high ridges. Solar panels line roofs and fields. Buses sip current from quiet lines. Homes seal leaks and stay warm with less. Fields keep cover so rain soaks in and soil stays put. Cities plant trees where summer cooks. Wetlands are rebuilt to slow floods and feed birds. None of these are magic. They are tools we can count. A kilowatt here, a hectare there, a liter saved, a ton held in wood and root. Stand on a hill at night and look down. The grid of light runs to the edge of sight. Beyond the last street, a dark field breathes and a fox trots along a fence. Both scenes are ours. Both can last if we choose with care. The next act will show signs of strain more closely. For now, hold two truths at once. People made a bright, fast world in a short span, and the older world that supports it still needs shade, cool, and rest. The same thin air that warms your tea is the air that wraps the globe. We can choose well. The signs are not hidden if you know where to look. Step outside on a hot afternoon and place your palm on dark pavement. It stings. A small handheld meter reads above 50 degrees Celsius on the black top, while the air in the shade is closer to 32. Walk to a tree and feel the change. Under the leaves, the air can be 10 degrees cooler, and the sound is soft, leaves rubbing like paper. Water carries new notes too. A summer rain that once fell slow for 2 hours can now come hard. 60 millimeters in 1 hour, with drops fat enough to drum on a tin roof. Gutters roar. Streets fill to the top of the curb in minutes. Then the rush is gone, and the ground is still thirsty because the water raced away. In other weeks, the rain does not come at all. Soil cracks. A pond pulls back from its edge by half a meter. The sea is changing in steady ways you can measure. Tide gauges along coasts show the long rise, on average about 20 centimeters since the year 1900, and in many places more. A storm that once pushed waves to the bottom step now sends foam over the top step. Salt sneaks into wells near the beach. Far from shore, sensors show that the ocean has taken up more than 90% of the extra heat the planet has gained. The water also turns a bit more acid as it takes in carbon dioxide. Ice rights changes with a clear hand. In the far north, summer sea ice used to cover a wide white shield. Now, in September, the ice area is much smaller than it was in 1980. Edges break early. Dark water soaks in sunlight, and the next melt comes easier. In high mountains, a glacier that once ended near a wooden post now ends hundreds of meters uphill. You can smell wet stone. Air holds more heat and more water, and storms change shape. Some places see stronger cyclones, with peak winds that bend signs and lift roofs. When these storms meet higher water, the surge goes farther inland. You can taste salt in the spray on a street that never saw waves before. Other places burn. A forest that once saw small ground fires can now flash into a crown fire that runs 40 kilometers in a day. Smoke turns the sun orange. Living things shift to keep up. A bird that nested on a certain date now arrives a week earlier. A plant that opened flowers in late April may now bloom in early April. Bees wake on one schedule, blossoms on another. A stream that runs warmer by 2 degrees holds less oxygen. Trout move upstream until they can go no higher. In the sea, fish move toward poles over a few decades, and new boats follow them. Cities feel all threads at once. Heat pools between tall walls. Air smells like hot dust and fuel. On a still day, the index for fine particles reads above 50 micrograms per cubic meter in some neighborhoods. A power grid hums near its limit as many small units pull current. If a line trips, dark spreads block by block. Yet in the same city, a park with wide trees and a pond can drop air by several degrees. None of these signs are secret or rare. They repeat. A single hot week is weather. A trend that climbs over 30 years is climate. Records kept in ink, on tape, and now in chips all say the same thing. Since the late 1800s, the planet's average surface temperature has risen by about 1.2 degrees Celsius. Carbon dioxide in the air has climbed from near 280 parts per million to over 420. Methane has more than doubled. These are small numbers in percent, but large in effect. They change the odds. Satellites since 1993 show sea level rising about 3 to 4 millimeters each year. Heat waves that used to hit once in 50 years are happening more often at 1 degree of warming. Many wild animal groups have shrunk. Some global counts show large drops since 1970. Forest loss takes millions of hectares each year. Plastic reaches the deep sea, and tiny pieces fall from the air like dust. If this were only a chart, it would be dry. But it is the sound of a fan in a small room at midnight. It is the feel of grit in your teeth when wind lifts topsoil from a bare field. It is the taste of warm well water at the end of a long summer. It is the sight of a high water mark scratched on a shop door with a date. It is the quiet of a dock at low tide when the sea does not fall as far as old paint lines say it should. There is tension because we know what helps, and we also know we move too slow. Keep soil covered so rain soaks in. Plant trees where shade is scarce. Save watts with better lights and tight doors. Shift rides and heat to clean power. Catch water on roofs and release it slow. Protect coasts with reefs, dunes, and marsh. Yet the clock ticks. Each year the sum grows. Each year the work gets harder. The foreshadow is simple. A system can bend and then not spring back. A coral garden can be lost in one long hot season. A forest can switch to grass after 2 or 3 big fires. A city that floods each second or third year will not hold people who can leave. If Earth was a test, this would be the part where the proctor walks by, taps the page, and moves on. The room is quiet, but the hint is clear. What you write next will decide how the rest reads. Thought Earth has limits, like safe lines on a gauge, even if you cannot see them. Stay inside, and the ride is smooth. Scientists track 9 big limits: heat in the air, health of wildlife, change from forest to field, fresh water, sourness of the sea, extra farm nutrients, new man-made stuff, dirty air, and the shield of ozone high above. These set a range where the world stays steady. Cross too far, and the chance of sharp change grows. Some limits are already past safe marks. The air is about 1.2 degrees Celsius warmer than in the late 1800s. Carbon dioxide is above 420 parts per million. Many animals and plants are fewer now than in 1970, and in some places half or more are gone. Forests have been cut while fields spread wide. Rivers are tapped so hard that some run dry for days each year. The sea is more acid by a small but steady amount, which makes shells harder to build and reefs easier to harm. Farms feed billions, but also leak extra nitrogen and phosphorus. These help crops grow, but when they wash into lakes and bays, algae blooms spread. Fish gasp at the surface. At the same time, homes and factories make new compounds and tiny plastic bits that travel through soil and water, and even the air. Some last for years. Some collect in the food chain. We often learn their effects late because they spread faster than we test them. One limit shows a win. The ozone layer was once in trouble as spray cans and coolers leaked gases that ate it. People acted. Nations signed a deal to stop those gases. Now the hole is healing bit by bit. This proves that shared rules can fix big risks when we move together and stay with the plan. It is a bright point in a hard chart, and it hints that other lines can also move back if we choose well and keep our word. But other lines still drift the wrong way. Methane keeps rising. Smoke from big fires sits over cities for weeks. In some places, the fine dust in air goes over safe marks by 2 or 3 times. When your throat feels a scratch, that is not a chart. That is your body saying the line is near or past. Tiny plastic now falls in snow on far peaks. New chemicals show up in clear streams. Behind the limits sit tipping points. A tipping point is where a small nudge makes a big change. Press a coin near the edge of a table and push a little more and a little more. For a while, nothing happens, then it slides and falls. On Earth, ice sheets can tip like that. Warm water melts ice shelves from below. The shelf breaks. Glaciers speed up and add millimeters to the sea each year. Coral reefs can tip too after one long hot season and then do not come back for a long time. Numbers show how close we are. Since 1993, the sea has risen about 3 to 4 millimeters each year on average. Heat waves that used to hit once in 50 years now happen more often at today's warming. Arctic sea ice in September covers much less area than it did in 1980. Groundwater drops as pumps pull more than rain can replace. These are not guesses. Gauges, floats, and satellites read them again and again. If Earth was a cosmic experiment, the log would read like this. The star is steady. The planet sits at a kind distance. The moon helps steady the tilt. A magnetic field blocks charged wind. Giants steer many stones. Life took root, spread, and learned to make tools. Then the main species grew fast and used fuels from deep time. That gave strong power and longer lives, but it pushed key lines. The log would mark clear stress in air, water, and land. Yet the same log would list fixes that work. Cities plant trees and cool streets by up to 10 degrees on hot days. Roofs go white and bounce light. Homes seal drafts and use less power. Wind and sun make clean watts. Buses run on wires. Wetlands hold floods and clean water. Farms keep cover on fields, so soil stays and rain soaks in. Fish zones get rest and then fill again. The ozone fix stands as proof that a line can move back when we agree and act. The clock adds tension to the story. Every year we wait. The hill grows steeper. It is like pulling a sled up a slope. Then your legs burn. If we cross more lines, we load the sled with stones. If we stop and rest too long, the sled slides back fast, and we must start again. A child born this year will see the year 2100 when they are 75. What kind of coast will they stand on, and what kind of sky will they breathe? Stand in a schoolyard at noon. The black top shimmers. Walk to the edge and pick up a small rock. It feels warm. Now move to the shade. A breeze smells like cut grass. The same yard holds heat and cool, strain and ease. The planet is like that yard, but on a vast scale. We still have shade to work with. There is foreshadow in simple acts. A bike lane brings riders, which brings nearby shops, which brings fewer car trips, which brings quiet streets. A tree on a block cools, slows wind, feeds birds, and lifts mood. A smart grid cuts waste and lets more clean power in. The opposite is true too. Each delay makes the next step harder. Old pipes burst more. Dry wells go deeper. Fires cost more and come more often in long dry spells that used to be rare. If the experiment failed, the reason would not be lack of warning. The hints are in heat, in water, in wind, and in the songs we no longer hear at dawn. If it passes, the reason will not be luck. It will be a long chain of small, steady shared acts. The lines on the gauge can still move the right way if many hands turn the right knobs together. That truth is simple enough to carry like a smooth stone, warm from the sun and easy to hold when the day is hard. If this planet really was a test, what would the test be for? Not speed. We passed that long ago. A message can circle the Earth in half a second. A flight can carry a person from one side of the world to the other before sunrise. Not strength. Machines we built can lift stones heavier than 10 elephants. Not knowledge. Our tools can read the heat of a star from trillions of kilometers away. We have maps of atoms and also of galaxies. But maybe the test was something else. Something simpler. Something softer. Maybe the real test was this. Can we live together? Stay kind. And take care of the place we depend on. It's easy to forget how thin our world really is. The air you breathe right now is just a small layer wrapped around Earth. From the ground to the top of the air we need to live, it's only about 8 to 10 kilometers thick in most places. That's less than the distance from one city to the next. You could drive it in minutes. All the oxygen, all the clouds, all the soft breeze and summer storms, they all fit in that space. Below that is soil, which grows food. Not deep, just a thin layer on top of rock. Dig a hole in your backyard, and you'll hit the bottom of the good soil in less than 1 meter. That thin skin grows all the fruit, all the grain, all the grass for cows and deer. The test, if it is one, was never about building big towers. It was about whether we'd remember how thin the things we rely on really are. Look around at what has lasted. Kindness. Trust. A hand held out to someone who fell. A shared meal. A story told again and again, even when the listener already knows the ending. These are soft things, easy to overlook, but they hold strong. When storms come, real ones with wind and rain, or storms of fear, of change, of loss, people remember who showed up with dry blankets, with hot food, with steady eyes. The deepest measure of a people may not be how tall their buildings stand, but how well they hold each other when the lights go out. Even the trees know this in their own way. In a forest, roots touch. One tree sends water to another through soil when it's dry. A sick tree may get sugar from neighbors. Fungi thread through dirt and carry messages, like a slow web beneath our feet. The forest is not just a group of trees. It is a network, a family. Even in death, an old stump can feed young sprouts. Nature has its own kind of test. Not just how well a thing grows, but how well it helps others grow too. If Earth was a project, maybe the goal wasn't survival alone. Lots of life survives. Bacteria survive. Ice fish survive. But maybe the real goal was grace. How well can we care for others while we live? Not just people. Birds, streams, pollinators, soil. Can we thrive without making everything else shrink or burn? The numbers tell us we can. We know how to make clean power. We know how to build homes that hold heat in winter and stay cool in summer. We know how to grow food that feeds people without killing rivers. We know how to heal land that was once a dump and turn it into a park. We even know how to capture carbon and lock it back into the ground. The hard part is not science. The hard part is the test of will. Will we act in time? Will we act together? Will we act fairly? If you think of Earth as a classroom, the lesson is clear. We're not alone at the desk. 8 billion classmates. All different. Some loud, some quiet. Some have more tools, some barely have chalk. The test isn't about who finishes first. The test is about who helps someone else finish too. There is beauty in the way birds fly in flocks. Watch them at dusk. They don't crash. They move like a thought. Each one watches just a few others, and yet the whole group turns together. That's not just luck. It's rules, trust, and shared space. Maybe humans can move like that too, if we pay attention to those near us. A city is a kind of flock. So is a school. So is a bus line. If one part breaks, the rest feels it. That's why the test may be about balance, about seeing beyond our own lane, about noticing when someone is falling behind, or when a part of the system is cracking. The tension in this chapter is sharp but not hopeless. We've been warned. The signals are loud. Heat waves, fire, flood, the melting ice, the rising seas, species disappearing. It would be one thing if we were confused, but we're not. We know. And that makes the question burn even brighter. Knowing all this, will we pass the real test? The answer isn't out there in the stars. It's not in space. It's in the steps we take each day. Will we plant trees or cut them? Will we waste water or save it? Will we let our neighbors suffer while we grow rich? Or will we build a bigger table and let everyone eat? There are stories from the past that help. Times when people planted trees they'd never sit under. Times when strangers carried sandbags to help others in a flood. Times when a group of kids cleaned a beach no one told them to clean. These are the quiet answers to the loud question. Yes, we still can. There's still time. Not much, but some. And that means hope still lives in our choices. The next act will ask what a failure might look like. But right now, we are here, breathing air that works, drinking water that flows, walking on land that grows food. This is not a sad end. This is a chance. If Earth is a test, we are not just the ones being tested. We are the ones who write the answers. And maybe, just maybe, the ones who grade it too. A failure doesn't always come with a bang. Sometimes it starts with silence. A missing song at dawn, a dry creek where frogs once called, a classroom where the air feels too thick to think, a street where summer heat hangs until midnight, no breeze, no break. If Earth was a test, and if we failed it, it might look like this. Not sudden, but slow. Not loud, but steady. A world that slips, little by little, out of balance. At first, the changes would seem small. The sea would reach one step higher each year. Not a flood, not right away. Just a new line on the dock. Then a new stain on the wall. Then water inside, where it never touched before. Salt would rise in wells. Rice fields near the shore would taste strange. Roads would buckle where the ground stays wet too long. Bridges would be closed more often. The tides would keep pulling, and the sea would not let go. In cities, the air would feel different. Not just hot, but heavy. More days above 40 degrees Celsius. More nights when the heat doesn't leave. Windows open but no relief. Power lines would strain as fans and coolers ran full tilt. Some grids would go dark. The heat would stay. Old people and young children would be the first to feel it. Ambulance sirens would echo more often on days with no clouds. In some places, schools would close, not from snow, but from heat. In the fields, rain would shift. Too much at once, or none at all. A season might bring floods, then weeks of dust. Corn leaves would curl before the ear forms. Wheat would ripen too fast. Fruit would drop too early. The soil, once dark and rich, would feel dry even after a storm. Worms would disappear. The top layer would blow in the wind or slide in the rain. Gone in a day what took centuries to build. Rivers would no longer follow their old rules. Some would shrink, others would rage. A river that once carried 10,000 liters per second might carry half that, or swell to 5 times more in a flash. Fish would vanish. Dams would sit dry behind cracked concrete. Boats would rest on mud. Lakes that once touched the horizon would pull back like a curtain, exposing stumps and rusted cans. Forests would burn hotter and faster. A spark in a dry place could race for kilometers in hours. Trees that once resisted fire would fall in piles. Some wouldn't grow back. Hills would stay bare. Then rains would come and carry the loose ash into valleys. Streams would turn black. Roads would wash out. Towns at the bottom of slopes would fill with mud. Wildlife would move or die. Bees might go first. Without them, crops would need help, tiny brushes or rented hives. Birds would vanish next, their calls replaced by hums from wires and distant traffic. Big animals would come closer to towns looking for food. Small ones would disappear into the soil and not come back. A child might look through books and point to a creature and say, "What's that?" And the answer would be, "It used to live here." This kind of failure wouldn't feel like one big moment. It would feel like a long, low ache. The way you miss something and don't know what until it's been gone a while. The shade on a walk. The sound of frogs after rain. The clear view after a storm, before haze became the normal sky. You wouldn't notice one day. You'd notice over time, when the map no longer matched the land, when summer came too early and stayed too long, and with these changes would come hard choices. Who gets water when the well drops? Who plants when the land is too dry? Who leaves when the coast floods again? And where do they go? Walls might rise, not to keep people safe, but to keep others out. Fear grows fast when things feel scarce. The test, if we failed, would not only be in the science, it would be in the way we treated each other when the balance tipped. Jobs would shift. Crops would change. Some places would dry out and others flood. Homes would lose value. Insurance would stop covering damage. Banks would say no. Some cities might shrink fast. Others would swell with those trying to escape. Roads would jam. Tempers would rise. The news would show heat maps and storm paths. Warnings would come more often. Help would take longer. If the failure came, it wouldn't be because we didn't know. It would be because we did. Because the signs were there and we waited. Because we thought someone else would act first. Or that the change would stop on its own. Or that small acts were not enough. But small acts stacked together are the only kind that ever mattered. The saddest part of a failed test is not the score. It's the chance lost. The path not taken. The cool day not spent outside. The clear stream not crossed. The friend not met because the trail was closed, or the fish were gone, or the trip never happened. It's the quiet moments that vanish when the system that holds them starts to fall. But even here, in the picture of failure, there is still a shadow of hope. Because the world is big. Because nature is stubborn. Because people care. A forest can grow back. A river can heal. A child born today can still see fireflies if we act fast. But that hope fades if we treat warnings like noise, or if we wait for the crash before we change. There is tension now, because we stand on the line. The choice to turn is still ours. The lights are not all off. The air still holds birdsong. The soil still holds seed. But the time for slow steps is gone. A turn taken late is still better than none at all. But a turn never taken leads only one way. If Earth was a cosmic project, this would be the report where the lead scientist leans back, sighs, and says, "They had the tools. They had the signs. They even had each other. But they forgot how thin their world was and how soft things must be cared for every day." The next act may ask, how would hope look even after this? And maybe the answer is, even after a failure, a test can be retaken. If you learn what mattered most. Not all stories end in loss. Some begin again, softer and slower than before. If Earth really was a test, then maybe we are still writing the middle, not the end. And maybe there is one thing stronger than fear. A clear path forward. shaped by action. Look around closely and you can see the signs already appearing. Not everywhere, not yet enough, but real. Small winds that whisper, this still can work. In the north of a hot city, a wide roof once shimmered with trapped heat. Now it is white, painted with bright reflective paint. On a summer day, the surface stays cooler by nearly 20 degrees Celsius. Inside, fans spin slower. The air feels easier to breathe. Nearby rooftops grow food, cherry tomatoes in buckets, mint in long beds, even a few bees buzzing gently among sunflowers that lean into the light. In the cracks between buildings, children play hopscotch while birds return to nest in boxes nailed under ledges. The noise is still there. Cars, horns, shouts. But above it all is the hum of something better. A city starting to cool itself down. Far away, in a dry part of the world, land that once turned to dust now holds rows of young trees. Farmers spread mulch and catch water from rooftops. They dig simple trenches that guide rain toward roots. Saplings stretch taller each month. The shade is thin, but growing. Wind moves slower across the fields. Soil stays in place. A single tree doesn't fix a desert, but 1,000 trees, planted with care, start to stitch the land back together. The people here laugh more often. Their goats eat green again. In another place, a wide river once ran brown with waste. Now it flows clear. Factories upstream added filters. Towns built wetlands beside the banks to clean runoff. Fish that vanished in the 1980s now return in slow, glinting groups. Children sit on the edge and toss bread to ducks. Water bugs skate in patterns across the surface. You can smell fresh mud and reeds, not chemicals. The river is not perfect, but it breathes again. These stories are not rare. They grow every year. A wind farm stands in what used to be empty hills. White blades turn quietly, each one making enough power for hundreds of homes. A school runs on solar panels. Students watch a screen that shows how much power the sun gave today. They cheer when the number rises. A bus glides by without a growl. It runs on batteries and moves like a whisper. The driver waves. The street feels calmer. The air is cleaner. In a forest once burned by wildfire, teams return to plant seeds. Not just any trees, but the right ones, spaced with care. Some plots are left alone to heal on their own. Science guides the plan, but the work is done by hands. Raking, digging, watering. Slowly, green creeps back. Birds perch on saplings. The quiet changes. One year brings grass. Another brings shrubs. Then, small trees. Fire may come again, but the land is ready now. Fire will meet life, not just ash. Hope lives in cities too. Some streets are now for walking and bikes only. Shops open their doors and fill sidewalks with color. Trees are planted every 5 meters. Their shade overlaps, and by summer, the ground beneath them is cool and dappled. In winter, lights hang from branches. People walk slowly, talking. The old fast pace softens. A busker plays a soft tune on a wooden flute. A dog drinks from a bowl outside a cafe. These are not big changes, but they add up. Even laws change. A country decides to stop drilling for oil and instead trains workers to install wind turbines. Another country gives rivers the same legal rights as people. A third stops using plastic bags, and within 1 year, birds nesting along the shore build cleaner nests. Plastic still floats in some places. Yes, but less. Every skipped straw, every reused bottle, every bag left behind adds to a gentle wave that grows stronger each day. The numbers shift too. More than 160 countries have signed goals to lower carbon emissions. Millions of homes now have solar panels. Forests that once shrank now hold steady. Some even grow. Coral reefs, given breaks from stress, show signs of repair. Species once thought lost are spotted again by patient scientists with notebooks and quiet hearts. These are small changes, but they stack, like drops of water that fill a jar. Even in the darkest places, people reach out. After a flood, neighbors build higher together. After a fire, strangers send seeds. After a storm, new rules make homes safer. Memory becomes a teacher. A mistake becomes a step. Pain becomes purpose. The foreshadowing is strong now, not of doom, but of a shift, like a wheel turning slowly onto a better road. It will still be hard. The hills are steep, but we are not walking alone. Each city that plants trees, each farm that saves soil, each child that learns how to test clean water. These are seeds. Each one grows a bit more hope. The world will not heal by magic. It will heal by effort, and effort begins with belief. Belief that we matter, that our choices count, that even if the test was almost failed, the page is not yet turned. There is no loud trumpet when change starts, just the quiet of people doing what needs to be done. One solar panel, one tree, one clean river, one warm room that stays cool in summer, one law, one rule, one hand held out, 1,000 acts small but steady. And then maybe the world tips, not toward failure, but toward care. If Earth was an experiment, maybe the lesson is not about what went wrong. Maybe it's about how quickly things can go right when we pay attention, when we work together, and when we refuse to give up on a world still full of life, light, and the power to begin again. In a room filled with screens, a quiet man watches a satellite pass over Earth. The pictures come in slowly, line by line, just like they always do. From space, the world looks still. Blue oceans, white swirls of cloud, green curves of land. But he knows better. That ocean is rising. That cloud might carry a flood. That land is changing fast. His fingers tap a rhythm on the desk as data fills the graphs. Lines move upward where they should level. Numbers climb where they should fall. Still, he watches. Still, he hopes. Meanwhile, a girl stands in her schoolyard. Her shoes crunch on gravel as she walks between rows of vegetables. It smells like mint and onions. Bees drift between bright yellow flowers. She bends down and touches a leaf, cool from morning rain. Her class helped build this garden. Her hands helped shape that bed. She knows where food comes from now. She knows dirt under her nails is a good sign. She looks up as a teacher walks by with a hose and waves. Elsewhere, a mother wakes early. She flips a switch, and her home lights up with power from the sun. Her panels sit high above the roof, soaking light even on cloudy days. She brews tea and steps outside to check her garden. A bird sings from a nearby tree, one she planted with her son 5 years ago. It now stands taller than her door. She smiles. The air smells cleaner than it did when she was a child. Not perfect, but better. Enough to notice. The world is full of moments like these. Some big, most small, but all real. That's what makes the picture complex. A failed experiment would be silent by now. But Earth still hums with noise and growth. Even in places where ice melts or forests thin, something green still rises from cracks in the sidewalk. Something sings, even if softly. In the Arctic, the sea ice is thinner than it used to be. Still, polar bears tread carefully across what's left. They pause at the edge of water, sniffing the air. Somewhere under the surface, fish flicker past. Not as many, not as big, but there, for now. This is the tension. Change is happening, but so is life. The line between loss and hope is as thin as the ice the bear walks on. In a high mountain valley, a glacier shrinks by nearly half a meter every year. A scientist crouches by a small stream that runs from the melting ice. He dips a sensor into the water, takes a reading, then writes in a notebook. His breath fogs in the morning chill. The glacier has pulled back almost 1 kilometer since his first visit 20 years ago. But today, he's not alone. 2 students kneel nearby, watching, learning. They laugh as they slip on the slick rocks, then steady each other. The scientist looks at them and nods. Maybe they will return one day and measure again. In the heart of a city, A street once packed with cars now carries bikes, feet, and quiet. Trees line the walkways. Their leaves flicker in soft wind. A cafe opens early. The baker places bread in the window. Steam clouds the glass. Across the street, a bus hums past. Electric. Clean. Quiet. Two boys play with a soccer ball near a bench. Their shoes thump gently against the bricks. It's a new sound for this street. A better one. In all these places, the story of Earth goes on. Not simple, not easy, but alive. And as it turns out, being alive is not the same as succeeding. But it is not the same as failing either. The world still has a chance. Not because we've done everything right, but because we've done some things right, and we know what more we must do. The sky tells stories too. Carbon levels are high, yes, but the curve is bending. Not flat yet, but slower. Some countries now emit less than they did 10 years ago. Some cities run for whole days without fossil fuels. It's not enough yet, but it's not nothing. And not nothing is sometimes the most honest place to start again. The tension now is not between good and bad, but between fast and slow. The damage came fast. The healing must be faster. That is the hard part. That is where the test gets hard again. Because to move faster means more effort, more trust, more change. It means letting go of what was once easy. Letting go of habits that felt normal. Letting go of the idea that someone else will fix it. A boy lies on his back in a field at night. The grass tickles his neck. The stars above shine like ice chips in black water. He points to one. His sister names it. Their dad tells them how old that light is. Older than cities, older than people. But this grass, this air, this moment, that's ours. That's now. That's what we still hold. All across the globe, people are waking up. Some because alarms ring, others because their hearts tell them it's time. Builders are raising homes that breathe. Planners are shaping towns that bend with storms instead of breaking. Teachers are planting ideas as deeply as seeds. Artists are painting futures worth walking toward. Farmers are growing with care. Children are asking better questions. Elders are sharing the old ways that once kept balance. If this experiment was ever close to failing, now it is close to something else, something not yet named. Not success, not yet, but a turn, a lean toward better, a reach for light. The girl in the garden watches a bee land on her sleeve. She holds still. It rests for one long second, then lifts off and floats away. She watches it go. Then she turns to the soil and presses one more seed into the ground. The test may not be over, but maybe we finally understand the question. And maybe, just maybe, we've begun to write the answer. The morning air smells like wet leaves and warm soil. A boy kneels by a narrow ditch where water runs slowly, clear and cold. His fingers trail through it, stirring the mud, watching little ripples dance around his hand. Behind him, rows of corn stretch toward the sky, their green stalks reaching nearly his height. The field used to be dry and cracked, but not anymore. The old farmer next door showed his family how to build these ditches and how to lay straw to keep water in. Now the plants grow straight and tall. The boy stands and listens. No machines, no traffic, just the wind in the leaves and a bird whistling from a fence post. He takes a breath, deep and quiet. This place is different now, and he knows it. Far away, a woman in a busy city pulls on gloves. She steps into a small lab full of blinking lights and glass tubes. A map glows on a screen in the corner, showing parts of the world where soil is healing. Tiny dots of green spread where brown once ruled. She smiles. Her team figured out how to make smart bacteria that help roots grow even in dry places. Farmers in 6 countries are now using her idea. She doesn't brag, she just works. Every morning, she whispers to herself, "Fix what we can." In a mountain village, people gather for a meeting under an old tree. The trunk is wide and rough, its branches heavy with fruit. A woman holds a notebook full of pages. They talk about water, how to share it, how to store it, how to clean it. No shouting, just quiet voices and nods. Even the children sit still. One boy draws circles in the dirt with a stick. He doesn't know all the words, but he watches how the grown-ups listen to each other. That's something new. That's something that might last. Under a sky full of stars, a young girl walks on a beach with her grandfather. The sand is cold under her feet. Waves brush the shore like soft whispers. She points to a dark shape in the water. A sea turtle, big and slow, crawling toward the sea. They watch in silence. The turtle disappears into the waves. The girl asks, "Did people always help them?" Her grandfather shakes his head. "Not always," he says, "but now they do." She nods. That's enough for her. Across the ocean, deep in a forest, two women carry bags of seeds. Their boots crunch on damp leaves. Light filters through the trees in thin golden lines. They stop every few steps to plant something. A seed, a hope, a future. The trees around them are young, but they grow fast. In 10 years, they'll cast thick shade. In 20, they'll carry birds and hold back the wind. The forest was nearly gone once. Now it's coming back. The women work with care. They speak only a little, but each seed they plant is loud in its own way. A teacher in a small school stands by the window as rain taps softly on the glass. Inside, her class learns about glaciers, rivers, and clouds. But today, they also talk about choices. A boy raises his hand and says his family switched to solar last month. A girl says her aunt stopped using plastic bags. These are not big things, but they matter. The teacher smiles and writes on the board. Change begins in small hands. Everywhere. People are building something better. A man climbs onto a roof and checks the panels that power his whole home. A teenager picks up trash from a walking trail and posts about it online, starting a chain that spreads to 800 more kids. A chef opens a restaurant that uses only local food. A mayor changes the city's laws to give space for gardens in every school. These are not perfect answers, but they are real ones. The world is still scarred. The glaciers are still shrinking. The oceans are still rising, but they rise slower now. And in some places, coral reefs are growing again. Forests are being protected instead of cut. Rivers are being cleaned, one bend at a time. Cities that once choked on smog now breathe easier. The change isn't magic, it's work. Hard, daily, quiet work. And still, the earth spins. The sun rises on lands where fires once raged and now hold sprouts. It sets over beaches where plastic once ruled, now lined with kelp and crabs and children digging holes. The moon rises over fields where soil breathes again, full of life. The stars shine down on people who once looked up in fear and now look up with plans. The test is not finished. It never was. But we are not failing anymore. Not everywhere. Not all at once. The boy in the field. The girl on the beach. The women in the forest. The teacher in the school. The worker on the roof. The leader at the table. They are all part of something bigger than themselves. They are the answer, slowly being written. And if Earth was an experiment, and if someone, somewhere is watching, maybe they see it too. Maybe they lean forward and whisper, not perfect, but improving. Maybe they mark something new on their chart. Not failure. Not yet. Try again. Keep going. Because when enough people care, even broken things can grow. Even damaged places can heal. Even scared hearts can find courage. And maybe, just maybe, a planet once thought lost can become something new. The wind blew softly through the valley, carrying the scent of pine, wet dirt, and something new. Hope. A young girl stood at the edge of a wide clearing, holding a notebook close to her chest. Behind her, dozens of students were planting tiny trees. Their knees were muddy and their faces sweaty, but no one complained. Some laughed, some sang, others whispered as they worked, careful not to crush the roots. The sun moved gently overhead, warming the tops of their heads. In that moment, The world felt calm, as if it were listening. A scientist watched from a small wooden platform nearby. Her boots were scuffed, and her hat tilted sideways from the wind, but her eyes were sharp. In her hand, she held a sensor that blinked green. Moisture levels had risen since last year. Soil that once crumbled like dust now held water like a sponge. 10% increase, she whispered, smiling. It wasn't much, but it was real. And real meant something could grow. In a city hundreds of miles away, an older man sat on a bench beside a small pond. Dragonflies darted through the reeds. Water bugs danced in rings near the edge. Children tossed crumbs to ducks and watched their ripples fade. 20 years ago, this place was a parking lot. Now it was a park. Trees arched over the walkways. Flowers bloomed in reds and yellows. And somewhere in the distance, someone played a guitar, the soft notes floating like petals on the wind. The man closed his eyes and listened. He could feel the difference in his lungs. The air tasted cleaner now. On a farm, a woman kneeled in her garden, pressing her thumb into the soil. It smelled sweet, like roots and rain. Earthworms squirmed away as she dug a hole for a new seedling. She placed it gently, covered it, and gave it a soft pat. Around her, tall sunflowers stretched toward the sky, swaying with the breeze. Bees buzzed nearby, busy and content. Her chickens clucked softly in the distance. This is how we fight, she said to herself. One seed, 1 inch at a time. Far above, in a space station orbiting the planet, an astronaut floated near a window. She looked down at the curve of Earth, glowing blue and white against the black sky. Clouds curled over continents like pulled cotton. Green patches marked forests that had returned. Brown scars still showed where damage lingered. But more and more, there was green. They're trying, she said, almost in a whisper. They're really trying. Her fingers pressed against the glass. From that height, all borders vanished. Earth looked small, fragile, alive. In a village that had nearly been washed away by a storm years ago, new homes now stood on tall stilts. Bright colors painted the walls. Rain barrels sat beside each porch. Children splashed barefoot in puddles, chasing frogs. A teacher led a group of them through the square, pointing to the solar panels on every roof. The sun keeps our lights on, she said. The rain keeps our plants growing. We learn from both. The children nodded, their eyes wide. One held a drawing of the sun hugging the earth. Not far away, a teenager adjusted a wind turbine blade with his father. The wind pushed at their jackets as they worked, tightening bolts and checking wires. The turbine began to spin, slow at first, then faster. A soft whir filled the air. The boy grinned. We made that, he said. His father nodded. And it makes power every time the wind blows. They stood there together, watching the tall white tower turn like a pinwheel against the sky. In a lab lit with soft yellow lights, an engineer adjusted the settings on a small machine. It looked simple, just pipes, wires, and a clear box, but it turned salt water into fresh drinking water. In parts of the world where rivers had dried up, this machine could save lives. She packed it into a crate with gentle hands, labeled the box, and passed it to a delivery truck. Next stop, Hope, she joked to the driver. He gave a thumbs up and drove off into the rising sun. A grandmother in a high-rise apartment opened her window and looked down at the street below. It used to be filled with cars and smoke. Now bikes zoomed past. People walked with dogs and pushed strollers. The sidewalks were wider. The air was cleaner. She leaned on the sill and smiled. Birds chirped nearby. One landed on her balcony. She whispered a small thank you and placed some seeds on the railing. In every corner of the world, something had shifted. It wasn't loud, it wasn't fast, but it was steady. A boy picking up trash on a beach, a city replacing pavement with green roofs, a girl starting a club to protect butterflies, a group of fishermen setting rules so the ocean could rest, a mayor planting a tree every week, a poet writing songs that made people care again. All of them together were stitching something back. The earth still had scars. Some would never fade, but more and more, new skin was forming. Tougher, greener, wiser. The people weren't perfect. They still made mistakes. But now they noticed. Now they tried. And trying, over and over again, was how life had always grown. One night, under a sky full of stars, a campfire burned quietly. Around it sat a circle of children, their faces lit orange by the flames. An elder spoke, her voice soft, like leaves in wind. Once we forgot how to care, but we remembered. And when we did, the world began to answer us again. A hush fell. One child asked, "Is it over?" The elder smiled. "No," she said. "It's just begun." A quiet rain tapped against the leaves, soft and steady like fingers drumming on a table. The forest floor smelled like wet bark and growing things. A young boy moved slowly between the trees, holding a sensor the size of a lunchbox. His rubber boots squished in the mud. Each beep from the device told him something important. How much carbon the trees were pulling from the air. He didn't understand all the numbers yet, but he knew this. Trees meant healing. Trees meant time. And these trees were winning. He looked up at the tallest one nearby. Its trunk was thick, the bark rough and full of moss. A bird flew out from a branch above, flapping hard, then gliding between trunks like a paper plane. The boy smiled. The sensor beeped again. It was working. The world, at least here, was getting better. Far away, a woman stood on the deck of a boat rocking gently in the sea. The sky was silver with morning clouds. A net hung behind her, full of plastic bottles and broken toys. She and her team had been pulling trash from the water since dawn. Her gloves were soaked, her hair tied back, her face tired but proud. She looked out at the waves. Somewhere below, coral reefs were starting to bloom again. Slowly, brightly, quietly, she had seen them with her own eyes. Tiny fish weaving through the coral, colors flashing like sunlight on oil. A few years ago, that reef had been pale and cracked. Now it pulsed with color again. Not perfect, but real. She reached into a cooler and pulled out a sensor reading. Water temperature had dropped 1 full degree. Just one, but enough to matter. In the desert, the sun blazed across a valley of mirrors. Solar panels stretched for miles, gleaming blue and black in the heat. A boy walked between the rows with a checklist. Every panel that faced the sun just right got a green mark. The power they made went to the town nearby. Fridges, lights, even air conditioners that ran quieter now. The boy wiped his forehead and smiled. His grandmother had once told him stories about days without power. But now, the sun gave them what they needed. They had turned heat into help. Meanwhile, high in a city tower, a woman sat in a room full of screens. One screen showed clouds, another showed wind patterns. One glowed with blinking green lights, marking areas where people were planting food on rooftops. She leaned forward and typed a few commands. A drone changed course. It would drop seeds over a burned hillside where soil still held promise. She had done this for years, sending seeds into fire-scorched ground. At first, it felt like guessing. But now, trees were growing. Real trees. Whole forests where there was once only ash. In a school made of glass and wood, children gathered around a table covered in leaves, stones, and feathers. Their teacher asked them a simple question. "What do you see that wasn't here 10 years ago?" A girl pointed to a bluebird feather. A boy picked up a pine cone. "Squirrels are back," he said. "My dad saw 3 last week." The class laughed. The teacher nodded. "And why are they back?" Hands shot up. "Because we stopped cutting trees. Because we cleaned the stream. Because we gave them space." Outside that same school, the air smelled sweet. Flowers grew where weeds once choked the ground. Butterflies danced over the grass like floating petals. Bees buzzed between blooms. The changes weren't loud, but they were everywhere. In a narrow alley between tall buildings, vines crawled up the brick walls. A man in a business suit stopped beside a planter and checked the soil. Damp. Good. He had been tending that small garden for 3 years now. Just 6 plants, but all strong. On his lunch breaks, he watered them. People teased him at first. Now they asked how to start their own. He smiled and gave them seeds. That's how it spreads, he thought. Not just green things, but ideas. On a wide plain, where winds once blew away every seed, farmers now worked in rows. They used special tools to plant deeper and wide cloths to hold in moisture. Between the rows, wildflowers grew, not on accident, on purpose. The flowers brought insects. The insects brought birds. The birds kept pests away. The soil held firm. One farmer leaned on her shovel and looked at her daughter. "This is what smart farming looks like," she said. "This is what the future tastes like." In every corner of the world, these small wins added up, not into perfection, not into paradise, but into proof. Proof that we could learn, that we could try, that we could fix more than we broke. But tension still hummed below the surface. Time was still short. Ice still melted. Storms still grew strong. Not everyone listened. Not everyone helped. Some held on to old ways. Some slowed things down. The clock kept ticking, but so did the work. That was the difference now. Before, people waited. Now they acted. Before, they feared. Now they hoped. Not blindly, but bravely. A child climbed onto a hill at sunset and looked out across the valley. Solar panels glittered like stars. Trees waved in the breeze. A river curved through the lowlands like a ribbon. Birds circled overhead. Somewhere, a train glided past on clean electric lines. The child took it all in. Then, he whispered a question, soft but clear. "What will it look like in 50 more years?" No one answered. Not yet. But if the trend held, if the care stayed strong, if people kept planting, cleaning, sharing, helping, then maybe, just maybe, that future would not only come, it would thrive. The morning sky was pale gold, with streaks of soft gray clouds stretching over the hills. A cool breeze passed through the trees, shaking tiny drops of dew from the leaves. A girl walked slowly along a dirt path with her grandfather. Each step crunched lightly under their shoes. They didn't speak at first. They just listened. The chirp of birds, the buzz of insects, the distant rustle of wind through tall grass. It was quiet, but not empty. It was full of signs. Signs of something that had been broken, but not lost. They stopped at the edge of a wide meadow. The land had once been stripped bare. Machines had torn through it, leaving nothing but dust and stones. But now, green had returned. Not everywhere, not fast, but strong. Flowers with purple and yellow petals leaned toward the light. Small trees stood like tiny guards, spaced carefully in rows. Bees floated from bloom to bloom. "It's working," the grandfather said. The girl nodded. She didn't need proof. She could see it. Miles away, deep in a city center, a woman looked over a rooftop garden. She ran her hand along the smooth metal railing. Below, cars rolled by. Quiet ones, powered by sun and wind. On the rooftop, tomatoes hung heavy on their vines. A boy watered the rows. A cat slept in the shade. The woman checked a tablet that tracked air quality. It had improved by 15% in the last 3 years. She smiled, not because it was fixed, but because it wasn't getting worse. In a dry valley where nothing had grown for decades, a new kind of farm was taking shape. The soil was not rich, but it was learning. Rows of plants stretched out like green fingers. Special drip hoses ran along each row, giving just enough water. A man checked each one, testing the moisture with a small sensor. He wore a wide hat and carried a notebook. This was his 4th season. The first had failed. The second had been weak. The third had shown hope. And now, the fourth, this one, was finally strong. He touched a ripe pepper and nodded. Sometimes slow was good. In a cold northern village where winters came early and stayed late, a school bus rolled down a snowy road. It didn't growl like the old ones. It hummed, quiet and smooth. Inside, children laughed as they looked out the windows. They saw snow falling, soft and thick. They saw tall trees that had once been nearly gone, now standing proudly with fresh branches. In their backpacks were drawings of windmills and water wheels, clean rivers and bright skies. They didn't know how bad things had once been. They just knew it was better now. And maybe that was the goal all along. A teacher stood at a blackboard and drew a wide circle. "This," she said, "is Earth. It used to be sick." She tapped the chalk. But then people changed. They listened. They worked. They cared. A student raised his hand. "Are we safe now?" The teacher paused. "We're safer," she said, "but we have to keep trying. Every day." She smiled. Earth is not a machine. It's more like a garden. We can't walk away from it. We have to keep planting. On the open ocean, a ship moved through calm water. It carried no oil. It burned no coal. Tall white sails and quiet engines pushed it forward. On board, a crew of scientists and students checked nets for signs of life. Jellyfish, tiny fish, bits of green plankton. They wrote notes, took samples, and smiled at what they saw. Some years ago, this part of the sea had gone silent. Now it sang again, softly but clearly. One girl leaned over the edge and watched a school of fish shimmer by. "They came back," she whispered. "They really came back." The night brought a soft rain to a quiet town. Street lamps glowed orange as the drops tapped against the pavement. In one home, a family sat around a table, playing a board game lit by solar-powered lights. Outside the window, wind rustled the trees they had planted 5 years ago. The father pointed to one. "That one was as small as your thumb," he said. "Now it touches the roof." The children laughed. The mother poured warm tea. They didn't speak about the past. They didn't need to. They were part of the fix now. A satellite moved silently over the planet, its cameras clicking every few seconds. It saw green where there had once been brown. It saw light where there had once been blackouts. It saw order where there had once been chaos. But it also saw scars, places not yet healed, forests still thin, ice still cracked, water still rising in places. The satellite recorded everything, sending it back to Earth, a quiet record of change, both the good and the hard. In a hall filled with quiet voices, leaders from across the world met again. No flags, no fights, just plans. They sat at round tables with clear maps and long checklists. They spoke with care. They disagreed. They worked it out. The oldest one there held up a photo from space, the Earth, glowing blue. "This is our test," she said. "It's not finished, but it's not failed either. Not if we keep going." The world had once felt like it was falling apart. Storms, fires, loss, fear. But now the story had shifted. Not into a fairy tale, not into a perfect picture, but into something else. Something honest. A slow, patient climb back. With every garden, every clean stream, every new tree, every bright classroom. The climb continued, and all around, the world began to echo one quiet truth. We're not too late. Not yet. There's still time, and that time is now. The wind brushed over the quiet hillside, moving the tall grass in slow waves. It was evening now, and the sun was dropping low behind the far mountains. Its golden light touched everything gently. Rocks, leaves, roofs in the valley below. On the highest point of the hill, a small group of people stood together. They were different in age, in dress, in stories, but they shared one look in their eyes: wonder. They had gathered to mark something, not a victory, not an end, just a step. One more turn forward. Around them, lanterns swayed on thin poles, each one lit with a soft, warm flame. From a distance, they looked like stars had fallen and chosen to rest there. The air smelled like wood smoke, rain-soaked soil, and the faint sweetness of wildflowers that only bloomed at night. A young boy held a scroll in his hands. His fingers trembled, not from fear, but from something else, something heavy. The kind of feeling that comes when you know you are holding part of a very old story. The scroll was a list, and on it were names, not of people, but of places. Forests once lost, rivers once poisoned, skies once choked. But beside each name was another word: restored. A woman stepped forward and placed a stone at the center of the circle. The stone had been carved with a spiral. The spiral shows that everything turns, she said, but it can rise as it turns. It does not have to fall again. Her voice was calm, but full. It filled the space like the low hum of thunder before a rain. Somewhere below, in the village square, children danced in a slow circle. Drums beat soft and steady. The people watching clapped gently, swaying with the rhythm. Old stories were being told again, not about how things broke, but how they were mended. A girl painted a wall with flowers and stars. A boy drew windmills and birds. They smiled as they worked, not because someone told them to, but because it felt right. In the next valley, a train whispered along its track. It ran on sunlight and moved like a smooth breath across the land. Inside, a group of teachers looked out the window and took notes. They were planning new lessons, lessons about how to live with the earth, not against it. One pointed to a lake below. "That lake was dry when I was a child," she said. "Now it's full of fish again." The others nodded, their pens moving. A man walked slowly down a forest path, his cane tapping the dirt. Every few steps, he paused to touch the trees. He had planted many of them when he was young. Now they stood taller than houses, thick and strong. Birds called from above. Somewhere nearby, water trickled through a stream. He smiled. "It worked," he said softly. "It really worked." His dog barked gently at a squirrel, then fell quiet again. On a high platform, a scientist adjusted a wide dish that pointed at the stars. She had spent her whole life looking out there, asking big questions. Why Earth? Why us? Why this? And for many years, she feared we would fail the test. But now, she wasn't sure this was a test at all. Maybe it was something else. A gift. A challenge. A chance to prove we could change not just the planet, but ourselves. She checked her instruments. The signals were clean. The dish had picked up a strange pattern. Soft, slow, not from Earth. Just a whisper. Just a pulse. But it matched nothing known. She recorded it and played it back. A beep, then silence, then a second beep, almost like a breath. Below her, cities glowed not in chaos, but in balance. Light powered by wind. Water moving through filtered channels. Green roofs. Gardens on balconies. People walking, talking, sharing. Not everything was perfect, but something deeper had changed. The race wasn't to dominate, but to care. In a quiet room, a writer lit a candle and opened a blank book. The pages were smooth and white. She dipped her pen in ink and wrote the first words. "We were warned. We nearly fell, but we chose to rise." She paused, then added more. The ink flowed like a river. Not facts, not charts, but stories. Stories of the moment the world turned. Not suddenly, but surely. Back on the hill, the young boy unrolled the scroll fully. The firelight flickered across the names. "These are the places we brought back," he read. "And these are the ones we still must help." He looked up at the group. "This story isn't finished." An elder placed a hand on his shoulder. "No story ever is," she said. "But this chapter is one of healing." A gust of wind moved through the lanterns. They flickered, but did not go out. Below, in the valley, someone began to sing. a simple tune with old words. Others joined. One voice, then five, then many. It wasn't a song of endings. It was a song of return. The stars above blinked gently. The sky held no answers, only silence. But it was the kind of silence that invited more questions, more tries, more hope. And as the fire burned low, and the people on the hill sat shoulder to shoulder, Earth spun slowly through space, not broken, not perfect, but alive. Still here, still trying. The sky above was deep blue, almost black at the top, and the stars began to peek through like tiny holes poked in a blanket. One by one, they came out. Small points of light so far away, no sound ever reached us from them. Just light, quiet, ancient light. A boy sat on the roof of a small house, his legs dangling over the edge. His mother sat beside him, wrapped in a thick blanket. They didn't talk much. They just watched. The roof was warm from the day's sun, still holding heat even as the air cooled. In the garden below, the night flowers had opened, their white petals glowing like tiny moons. Somewhere nearby, a cricket chirped, slow and steady, like a ticking clock that didn't care about time. The boy leaned back, his head resting on a folded sweater. "Do you think they're watching?" he asked. His mother smiled, but didn't answer right away. She looked up too. One star blinked red. Another flickered blue. "I don't know," she said softly. "But maybe watching isn't the point. Maybe doing is." Far away, on the other side of the world, a girl in a mountain village poured water into a small clay pot. Steam rose from the mouth as herbs soaked and swirled. Outside her window, wind rustled through tall pine trees. Her hands, though small, moved with care. The tea wasn't just for warmth. It was tradition, shared from her grandmother and her grandmother before that. The recipe had been passed down like a song. She added one more leaf and watched it spin. In a nearby field, goats moved quietly in the dark, bells around their necks, barely making a sound. A boy with a flashlight checked the fence, just as he had every night for the past year. He didn't fear the night like he used to. Now, he understood it. The way stars moved, the way animals rested, the way his breath made little clouds in the air, then vanished. Across an ocean, a city lit up slowly, not with neon or fire, but with soft amber lights powered by wind and sun. On a rooftop garden in that city, a young man picked ripe tomatoes and placed them gently in a basket. He had learned to grow food here, in the middle of tall buildings, where the sky once seemed too far away. Now the sky felt close. Now, the earth felt close too. A teacher in another city sat with her students around a table. On the table were 7 small jars, each filled with soil from a different place, one sandy, one rich and dark, one red like clay. The students passed the jars, smelling the earth, feeling its texture. "Every piece has a story," the teacher said, "and every story leads to us." One girl held the darkest soil in her hands. "This one smells like rain," she said. The others nodded. Even the ones who didn't speak smiled. In a quiet lab surrounded by trees, a group of scientists looked at a screen. On it was a model of Earth, turning slowly, covered in layers. Air, water, life. They had spent years collecting data, asking hard questions. Some of their answers were scary. Some were strange. But one thing was clear. Things could still change. Not in the past, but in the now, and in what came next. They saved the file and closed the screen. Outside, the forest was thick and green, and the air smelled like pine. One scientist stopped to pick up a fallen branch and moved it off the path. A small act, but it cleared the way. Back on the roof, the boy's mother pointed to a cluster of stars low on the horizon. "See that one?" she asked. "That's where they think another planet might be. A place with air, maybe even water." The boy squinted. "Do you think anyone lives there?" he asked. She tilted her head. "Maybe. Or maybe they're asking the same thing about us." The wind picked up, brushing their hair and carrying the smell of wood smoke from a chimney down the street. In that moment, the stars didn't seem so far. The universe didn't seem so quiet. It felt like maybe, just maybe, someone or something was listening. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe the experiment was ours alone, with no audience, no judge, no scorecard. And if that was true, then maybe it was better that way. Because what matters most isn't who watches, it's what we do when no one is. It's the seed you plant when no one sees, the trash you pick up when no one tells you to, the forest you protect even when it's hard, the story you tell that helps someone feel less alone, the moment you choose kindness over ease, the time you stay quiet so someone else can speak. If Earth was ever a test, we don't know the rules. If Earth was a project, we never saw the blueprint. But if Earth was a gift, a fragile, spinning world full of fire and water and air and love, then maybe our job was never to pass or fail. Maybe it was to care, to notice, to act, to stay. So the boy on the roof looked up at the sky, stars glowing above him like ancient thoughts, and he whispered the only thing that felt right. "We're still here." His mother reached out and held his hand. The stars didn't answer, but the earth did, in the wind, in the crickets, in the breath they shared under that wide, watching sky. They stayed there a little longer, not saying much, just listening, just being, and the earth kept turning,